Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really opening up something fascinating, looking into the, let's say, the spiritual side of the animals we share our lives with. This is a deep dive based on some pretty specialized source material investigations done via telepathic connection, looking right into animal consciousness.
Exactly. And these sources, they essentially give us a kind of spiritual blueprint. It helps us understand the energetic structure of our non-human companions. And honestly, some of the findings are quite startling. We're asking some big questions here. Do animals actually have personal karma? And, could our own emotional state, our stress, our sadness literally be like draining their energy through these invisible connections?
That's really the mission today. We want to give you a shortcut to understanding what these sources found, everything from how animals might reincarnate to the point where a loving bond with a pet might tip over into something potentially harmful like an energetic vortex. So let's start right at the beginning, the basic structure of their awareness.
Okay. So when the investigation looked at animal consciousness, and let's just use a dog as the main example here, the first thing identified is a personal consciousness. This is like the individual layer. It operates really close to the physical body, gives the animal its unique personality, its quirks.
Right, but that's where it gets different from us, isn't it? For humans, our personal consciousness feels like the whole picture, mostly. But for animals, that personal field connects immediately to something bigger.
Much bigger, yeah. It extends right out into a common consciousness, one shared with their entire species or group.
Okay.
Think of it as this huge shared energetic field. And the sources strongly link this field to instinct. That's the key word here. It's the common thread managing group communication, dictating those automatic behaviors we see across animal groups. It's essentially their survival operating system.
And when you compare that to humans,
Yeah.
wow, the complexity difference is huge. Our consciousness is described as way more intricate. You've got mental, emotional, sexual aspects all woven together, giving us much greater power of will, more capacity for, like, rational thought.
Definitely. Animal consciousness, by contrast, is seen as less complex. It's predominantly based on feelings and the present moment. They're reacting to what's happening right now. They don't have that same internal loop for complex planning or dwelling on the past like we do.
Interesting. And it seems not even all animals have that personal layer you mentioned first. There's a kind of hierarchy.
That's right. The sources point out that simpler creatures, maybe social insects like ants or bees, they seem to connect directly to that big collective consciousness. They essentially bypass having a distinct personal subliminal part.
So they don't need that individual layer.
Apparently not for their function. The key factor, the condition for an animal developing its own personal subliminal part, that individual spark, let's call it, seems to be having more experiences on Earth, more lives lived, basically. It suggests the kind of spiritual progression towards individuality.
Okay, so for the animals that do have that personal layer, dogs, cats, many others, how does that individual part interact with the big collective instinct field?
It functions like an automatic guidance system. So if an animal faces a situation where its personal experience isn't enough, maybe learning a new survival trick or sensing danger, its personal subliminal part just links up to the collective and automatically pulls the necessary signal or instinct.
Like downloading the right software update on the fly.
Exactly. It's a supportive guide, purely functional.
That makes total sense for survival. But here's a really key difference the sources highlight, isn't it? Humans also connect to a collective consciousness. But for us, that influence is often described as, well, negative. How can the same mechanism be helpful for a dog, but potentially drag a human down?
That is such a crucial distinction, and it boils down to personal development. For animals, the collective is pure instinct, essential, non-judgmental guidance, survival data. For humans, though, we get influenced by the collective consciousness when our own thinking, our own beliefs, our personal experiences are sort of underdeveloped or unexamined. If a person hasn't built up strong, rational individuality, the collective can act more like a negative feedback loop, reinforcing societal fears, limiting beliefs, prejudices, things like that. It's not providing simple survival signals anymore.
Wow, okay, so instinctual help versus undeveloped influence. That's a really powerful way to frame it. And it leads us right into thinking about their spiritual journey. Do animals carry karma, like actual karmic debt?
The sources say, interestingly, some of them do. And again, it seems directly tied to their history, how many lives they've had, how developed that individual consciousness has become. It's like a marker of their progress toward greater self-awareness.
So they're seen as beings kind of the beginning of their experiential journey on Earth, cycling through, learning, progressing bit by bit.
Precisely. They're definitely in the reincarnation cycle. But for many animals, the decision to come back, to reincarnate, it happens almost automatically. It's often driven by a persistent curiosity or maybe a strong feeling left unresolved from the last life.
Not like a conscious, rational choice we might imagine.
Less so, yeah. They generally lack that complex rational ability to make what we'd call big decisions, like choosing to take a break between lives or deciding to completely switch evolutionary paths. They just tend to cycle back into life, driven by those immediate forces.
Which brings us right to the human element. We love our pets deeply, of course.
Yeah.
But can that love, that bond, actually become spiritually problematic? Can it create a karmic tie?
Oh, absolutely. The sources are quite clear in this. They describe actual energetic strings, connections forming between specific people and their animals. Now, this bond starts as a subliminal co-creation. It's meant for deep connection, companionship. But if the attachment goes too far, if it becomes based on dependency, that's where the trouble starts.
Wait, hang on. How does a loving bond turn destructive? What's the actual trigger that flips it from just strong attachment to this harmful vortex of energy you mentioned?
The trigger is the underlying need fueling the bond. If the human is primarily using the animal as an emotional crutch-like, a constant source of validation they aren't finding elsewhere, or a refuge from their own unresolved issues, that attachment string gets overloaded, becomes too prominent. When it thickens like that, it forms this swirling vortex of energy between them, circulating whatever the dominant emotions are, often stress, sadness, anxiety from the human.
Okay, I see.
And this vortex can genuinely harm either the animal or the person. It creates a karmic link because true healthy detachment becomes incredibly difficult, almost painful.
And I guess that vortex is like an open door for other things. Does this make them vulnerable to external interference? Can other consciousnesses actually try to interfere with our pets?
Yes, and often using that very connection. External consciousnesses might try to destabilize the animal's energy. Why? Because that instability then travels right across that thickened attachment string and destabilizes the human.
And the goal is?
Often it's just a quick energy grab, especially if the animal is already stressed or constantly absorbing the owner's lower frequency emotions. In more complex situations, though, it might be a targeted attempt to affect the owner by using the animal as a kind of conduit.
Right. The sources gave us a couple of really clear case studies that show the difference between that harmful dependency vortex and a truly healthy connection. Let's look at the first one, the negative vortex. This involved a small dog and an owner who was really struggling, dealing with a lot of stress and sadness.
Yeah, this case is a powerful example of that danger. The dog was incredibly perceptive, naturally. It strongly sensed and just soaked up the owner's stress like a sponge. The attachment was mutual, very intense, but it formed exactly that negative vortex. Stress just constantly circulated between them. The owner relied heavily on the dog for emotional support, but wasn't really addressing her own core issues, wasn't communicating consciously with the animal about it.
So the dog became like a spiritual buffer, taking the hit.
Exactly. The source described the dog as literally being sucked out of energy. The owner was unconsciously draining it. And the really tragic part is that this intense, almost compulsive bond persisted right through the animal's death.
What happened then, when the dog passed away in that state?
The dog's single, overwhelming final thought, driven purely by that powerful emotional pull and lacking rational perspective, was sheer compulsion. To have to go back to help the owner.
Wow.
That feeling, that desperate sense of duty, it fueled the reincarnation impulse. But here's where the system shows a kind of wisdom. The dog returned, yes, but its next life was as a street dog.
A street dog?
Yeah.
That's a complete opposite of being a dependent pet.
It's a profound correction, isn't it? The new life forces that consciousness to learn independence, resilience, survival skills, all the things missing in that codependent relationship. It shows that even within that somewhat automatic reincarnation cycle for animals, there's a mechanism for balancing and necessary growth.
Okay, that's quite sobering.
Yeah.
Now, let's shift to the other side. Case study 2, the healthy harmony. This involved a cat and what was described as an integrated owner. What did that look like energetically?
It was completely different. The connection was clearly based on love and respect. The cat was treated as a companion, an equal being, not, an unpaid therapist. Energetically, their fields weren't linked by some heavy, needy cord. Instead, they were described as intersecting and harmonizing fluidly. There was no sense of dependency, no major draining of energy or transfer of negativity.
And you could see that difference in the detachment process at the end of the cat's life.
Absolutely. It was peaceful because there wasn't that heavy anchor of attachment pulling the animal back towards the physical or the owner's unresolved needs. The cat's subliminal part, its consciousness detached smoothly before the moment of physical death,
So it was free.
free to choose its next step with clarity. It completed its learning journey with the owner without becoming spiritually entangled or indebted.
This comparison really drives home the point about the human factor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The owner in the negative vortex scenario was looking outwards for solutions, for emotional refuge.
Whereas the healthy owner, the cat's companion, had a sense of wholeness. They were doing their own inner work, seeking answers from within. That internal stability it prevented the codependency from ever taking root. The conclusion from these sources seems undeniable. The human's level of consciousness, their emotional and spiritual maturity, profoundly impacts the lives, the health, and even the death processes of the animals closest to them.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit then. Looking at the animal kingdom more broadly, did the sources identify any particular animals as being, metaphysically speaking, the most evolved in terms of their consciousness or spiritual bodies?
They did. They definitively placed the dolphin at number 1,
Okay.
followed very closely by the cat. Their higher standing seems related to the complexity of their mental body and, crucially, their awareness of the metaphysical space around them, which is apparently greater than many other species.
That led to some really interesting analogies in the source material, comparing the different subtle bodies, animal versus human. Let's unpack those because they really highlight the differences. What about the mental body, the mind?
Okay, so picture the mind like a filing cabinet. An animal's mental body is described as being like a small cabinet, maybe just 5 or 6 drawers or files.
Right.
A human mind, comparatively, is like a cabinet with 30-plus drawers. It's packed with intricate cross-references, complex memories, layered emotional history, just much more capacity.
And what does having, say, 30 drawers let us do that the 5-drawer mind can't? What's the functional difference?
Well, it gives us the ability to hold multiple, even contradictory ideas at the same time. And critically, it underpins our capacity for sustained, rational choice, complex planning, and abstract thought. The animal mind is perfectly functional for its needs, feeling, reacting, surviving, but it just doesn't have the bandwidth for creating long, complex narratives about the past or future or setting intricate spiritual goals. It can't sustain the kind of focused willpower needed for, say, major karmic shifts.
Makes sense. And the comparison for the sexual body was also really distinct.
Very much so. In animals, the sexual body, the energy associated with it, is described as a very short, intense spark or impulse. Think of a quick flash of lightning or lighting a single match. It's primarily a biological drive. In humans, it's presented as a far more complex, potentially controllable process. We have the capacity, consciously, to direct and utilize that powerful energy over longer periods and for purposes way beyond just reproduction, creativity, spiritual work, things like that. Animals lack the conscious framework, the mental complexity to direct that energy in non-physical ways.
And the emotional body. How does our human ability to think about our feelings change the experience compared to an animal?
An animal's emotional body is simpler, more direct. They react intensely to the present moment and what's around them. They feel joy now, fear now, territorial urges now. The human emotional body, though, isn't just reacting to the outside world. It's constantly interacting with that complex 30-plus drawer mental body. We can feel intense stress about something that happened years ago or anxiety about something we imagine might happen next month. That mental integration makes our emotional landscape much more dynamic and, frankly, more challenging to navigate.
And tying that back to the case studies, it reinforces that idea about cats maybe being more attuned to the subtle, the metaphysical side.
Exactly. More conscious potentially of their own subliminal part and those unseen energetic currents. Whereas dogs tend to be more grounded in the physical, the material world, reacting very strongly to the present moment and their immediate environment, which, again, explains why they might be more prone to absorbing the physical stress of their owners.
So given all these deep energetic connections, the different ways they perceive, what are the practical ways the sources suggest we can actually improve communication with the animals in our lives?
2 main ways came through clearly. The first is pretty straightforward. Actions. How you physically treat them. Respectful handling, building trust through consistent kindness, loving physical contact. That baseline is essential.
Right, the foundation.
The second, and maybe even more crucial according to these sources, is focusing on intentions and energy. Animals are incredibly sensitive to clear, intentional energy. They feel love, focused attention, anger, sadness. They pick it up immediately, directly from your energy field. So, communicating through your state, your intentional energy, is often far more effective than relying just on words or commands.
That makes a lot of sense. We've covered so much ground here, really an astonishing deep dive. The fluid nature of animal consciousness, the collective connection, the conditions around their reincarnation, and maybe most importantly, how deeply our own inner work affects the well-being of these beings sharing our space.
It really does shift the perspective, doesn't it? And what's truly fascinating, maybe even a bit challenging, is the weight of responsibility this seems to place on us. Think about it. If an animal, operating largely without complex, rational choice, feels such a powerful compulsion that it essentially sacrifices its own potential journey just to rush back and try to help a dependent human, well, it makes you pause. It raises a profound question, doesn't it? What does this tell us about the ultimate spiritual responsibility, maybe even debt, we carry for the beings we choose to bring into our lives, and just how critical it is for us to work on healing our own energetic dependencies right here, right now?
It really redefines what partnership with an animal can mean. A lot to think about there. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. We'll see you next time.